When there's a group of people who have been treated just brutally, like this group has by Fedra, they had been raped, beaten, murdered, mistreated in all kinds of other ways. You take them and you all of a sudden set them free, and they can then take revenge on the people who used to beat them down. That's when you have mob mentality. And it's a fascinating but also frightening revelation of what humans are really capable of. You see, where the infected have now become one and come together because of the fungus, this is a real life version of that. Humans have this ability to lose their individual sense of self and do things they never would have done on their own. See, because they're anonymous and the emotions are really high around them, there's this thing called contagion theory, where the frenzy of each person feeds off of the other one, and it becomes this multiplied frenzy where everybody isn't really thinking for themselves. It's just this contagious energy of let's do things that used to be not acceptable, but now we say they are because of all the emotion and anonymity. Individually, it's this euphoric feeling where you lose this sense of self-awareness. Like you can kind of see through your eyes what your body is doing, but you don't really understand who's in control of what you're doing at the moment. And then the group tends to be able to justify its actions because there's so many people doing horrible things. There's this diffusion of responsibility where one individual usually can't be held responsible for everybody's actions. And sometimes when one violent regime gets overthrown, the one that replaces it becomes even more violent. And that's exactly what happens, and it affects Henry and Sam. So just like Ellie is now Joel's purpose, Sam is Henry's purpose. Henry knows he's got to do whatever it takes to make Sam safe, both physically and emotionally. And in this moment when he finds out the doctor isn't coming back, Sam just doesn't know anything else to do but just wrap his arms around Henry. And Henry knows that. Henry is there to comfort him in that moment. Henry also does the right thing by being honest with Sam. See, Sam's old enough now and he's seen enough stuff happen where Henry's just gonna be doing him a disservice by trying to shield him from a lot of these facts. It's better with kids in a rough situation, if they're old enough, it's better to go ahead and be honest with them. You don't have to give them every detail, but at least trust them enough and let them know, hey, here's what's happened, but also here's the plan of what we're gonna do next. And whether it's a child or an adult, a hug has a massive impact on how you feel. See, hugs have been shown to increase happiness, decrease blood pressure, and decrease stress. And hugs are the best, but any sort of physical touch, like hand holding, hand on the shoulder, they can also decrease these things. So can petting your dog or your cat, or even touching an inanimate object like a stuffed animal. All these types of physical touch, that can reduce all these negative emotions like fear. Studies show that infants who got a lot of nurturing physical touch when they were young, they experience less anxiety and less reactivity towards stress when they're older. And somehow hugs can also keep you from getting sick. See, they did a study where they took 400 adults, half of them got a lot of hugs, half of them got no hugs. Then they exposed all 400 of them to the common cold, and the group that got the most hugs got sick far less often than the group that didn't. And here's a little bonus tip for you. One of the coolest facts I know about the body is that if you place your hand over your chest and leave it there for about 2 minutes, that activates the same part of your brain as if somebody's giving you a hug. Henry is a genius at being able to put courage into Sam. See, he uses Sam's love of superheroes to bring out that courage, that bravery, that boldness that he knows is in Sam as well. And drawing that mask on Sam helps Sam draw out from within him a lot of those strong traits that he's going to need, but maybe he didn't even know he had in the first place. It also lets Sam take on this alter ego. See, alter egos can be really helpful in real life because sometimes it's easier to pretend that we have certain qualities rather than try to convince ourselves that we have them. A famous football player named Bo Jackson was doing an interview with a reporter one time, and the reporter asked him, and Bo had this strange answer. He said, well, the secret is Bo Jackson has never set foot on a football field. And the reporter said, what do you mean? And Bo said, when I step out on that field, I've created this character in my head, kind of like this professional wrestling looking character, that as soon as I cross over that line onto that field, I just become that character. I'm no longer Bo Jackson. So anything that character does out there, he's the one who's super aggressive and charging forward and almost invincible. And sometimes we all need that to make it through challenges. And a lot of times something physical, whether it was Sam's mask or something else that we wear, that can help us to shift into that alter ego, a really strong state. This is a tough story for me to tell, but I had a friend who had to walk his sister down the aisle at her wedding because their dad had died just a few months before the wedding. And he didn't know how he was going to be able to do that, how he was going to make it through that moment. And And it happened to me as well. I lost my dad just a few months before my sister was about to get married, and I was the one that got to walk her down the aisle. And so I asked my friend, how did you get through this? How did you do this? And he said, I wore my dad's cufflinks. And in that moment, as I was walking my sister down the aisle, I wasn't me anymore. I was my dad. And he said every time I started to feel like I was going to lose it, I would just reach to my cufflink and touch that. And just that physical touch reminded me of my dad basically working through me. And I thought, oh, wow. It really helped me get through that same moment, to know that something physical like that helped him to get through a tough moment, just like Henry and Sam have been able to come together and put courage into each other.
I'm Ellie.
These are just some of the scenes from this episode that show us that Joel and Ellie, they have now become father and daughter. Now, it isn't just Joel teaching Ellie how to survive, it's Ellie teaching Joel how to function like a sociable human being. So when she tells Joel, for example, to change his tone when they're both at gunpoint, she's trying to knock some sense into Joel. Joel's got this one-track mind where he's projecting strength, confidence, he's never letting anybody see what he's really thinking. And in that moment, Henry's really trying to be nice, and Joel's just making it worse with how he's talking back to Henry and using that creepy tone. And you can just see the look on Ellie's face of like, dude, what are you doing? Change your tone. I love it. And she's got that same incredulous look on her face when Joel doesn't say his name after everybody else has introduced themselves. I love the idea of just hitting him as the nonverbal way of saying, come on, man, wake up. Do what a normal person does.
Get your gun out.
And when Joel tells her to get her gun out right when they're entering those tunnels, that smile on her face says it all. This is what she's been craving for ever since she's met Joel. She doesn't want to be just cargo, and she's basically had to have been up until now, but this is the moment when Joel lets her in and treats her as a peer. He makes her feel accepted, he makes her feel needed, and he allows her to contribute with those skills that she knows that she has.
Dad's kind of a pessimist.
He's not my dad.
But it's so perfect when they both correct Henry in unison about them not being father and daughter. See, as much as they're bonded and as much as they rely on each other and I think now truly love each other, they're both so similar in the fact that they're not going to show it. They both still got that avoided attachment where they know how they feel about each other, but they also feel like they got to stay strong and stoic all the time and not show any emotion because it might be the weakness that gets us killed. But even though they know all that, they also know how they feel about each other. They just aren't real comfortable showing it or communicating it.
There was one drug that worked, and, well, big shock. There wasn't much left of it, and it belonged to Fedra. And if I wanted some, I was gonna take something big. So I gave them something big. Yeah, so, still think they should take it easy on me? Or am I the bad guy?
Learning Henry's backstory reminds me just how complicated each individual person is. See, we want to just put somebody in a box. We want to just make them fit this mold where they're all this or all that. They're either all good or all bad, but that's just not how it goes. Our tendency is often to take somebody and reduce them to their worst moment or their worst mistake, or take somebody and put them on this pedestal because of their best moment or their most heroic decision. But we don't want other people to do that to us. We want them to see us as the complex individuals that we are, that have backstories and tough decisions to make.
What you waiting on, man? The answer's easy. I am the bad guy because I did a bad guy thing. But you get it, though. You might not be her father, but you were someone's. See, I could tell.
And that's what Henry helps Joel realize. See, he owns his stuff. He doesn't try to justify it. He just says, hey, here's the context of the decision I made, and now you be the judge. Am I the bad guy? Am I the good guy? Maybe I'm both. And you can see the wheels turning in Joel's mind, and it's showing up in his facial expressions. He's looking down. A lot of times when somebody looks down, they're looking inside themselves. They're pondering something deeply. So all the backstory that Henry's going through, Joel has a lot of similarities, and Joel starts realizing, oh yeah, I've done some stuff I'm not proud of too, just to be able to survive or to protect the people I love. And especially when Henry says, hey, even though Ellie might not be your daughter, I know you're somebody's dad. And Henry even says, I could tell. And that, you can really see it written on Joel's face. He's starting to really spin back into those past moments that he tries not to live in. But Henry's brought him back to those moments to help him realize, hey, you and I have a whole lot of similarities, so don't just characterize me as all good or all bad. Understand I've done good things, I've done bad things. See me as this whole complex person.
When Michael and I were little, this room seemed so big. I was really scared of thunder. So when there was a storm, Michael told me that this wasn't a room at all. That this was actually just a big wooden box. A big wooden box that nothing could get inside of. He said, as long as we were together in our perfect box, we would be safe.
Kathleen is this bone-chilling mix of sociopath and kindergarten teacher. There's this odd sweetness about her as she's carrying out these cold-blooded, heartless acts. And her backstory helps us somewhat understand why she is the way she is. But she says that she was never sweet. I'm not sure I believe that. I think she probably was at least partially sweet before Michael's death. And maybe she had a mixture of some of these evil tendencies underneath the sweetness, but there's just too much of that weird kindergarten teacher in her for her to have never been sweet like she claims. I think she's taken on this alter ego, this new identity, in order to get the revenge she needs. And unlike most villains, she's really self-aware. She fully understands that when she lost Michael, she lost her sense of safety. And when somebody loses their sense of safety, they become capable of a whole lot of stuff that they just wouldn't have done before. They go into fight or flight mode, and they can stay in fight or flight mode. And of course, in this case, Kathleen has stayed in fight mode. And a lot of people, you can tell when there's a big reaction that somebody has, something that seems to be bigger than whatever just happened in the circumstance, you can probably figure out that they were afraid of losing something. They were afraid of losing something that to them brought safety or comfort. And when the nervous system either does lose safety or comfort, or thinks it's about to lose something that brings it safety or comfort, it gives a big reaction, either to prevent the action from happening, to prevent that loss of safety, or to get revenge on whatever it was that brought that loss of safety, that ripped it away. And even though Kathleen doesn't have Michael anymore as her protector, as her sense of safety, she still goes back into their room where he made her feel safe all those years ago. And that's actually something that's positive for us to do as well. So if you have physical places you can go that really help you escape the stress of the world, that you can just go and tune it all out and feel like nothing can get to you, definitely go there repeatedly. If you don't have a place like that physically, go there in your mind. I have a room that I go in my mind that I used to go when I was a kid. My aunt had a house and it's since been torn down, but there was just the den in her house. For whatever reason, to me, it felt safe. It felt comfortable. It felt cozy. And every time I was in there, I just felt very calm, very relaxed, like everything was going to be okay. And now, whenever I need to calm down in the moment, part of my mindfulness routine is I close my eyes and I really relive being in that room again. I start to try to see everything I can in my mind's eye, try to feel how the couch felt when I'd sit on it, how the carpet felt under my feet. And if I can really relive being in that room, even though I'm in some other physical place, I start to feel the emotional benefits. I start to get calm. I start to get relaxed just by closing my eyes and letting the imagination take over and really helping me out in the moment. But an unhealthy way that Kathleen has dealt with Michael's loss and the ensuing loss of safety is that she decided, I'm just going to dissociate myself from any vulnerable parts, any parts that even feel like even somewhere close to fear. I'm just going to separate myself from them. I'm going to become a stoic caricature of myself that's just got a single-minded focus on revenge. And that's actually a pretty common way for people to respond to major trauma. They just shut it out. They ignore it. They put it in a closet somewhere in their soul, and they never deal with it. And you do that enough, the brain can do that enough to where you really can, in rare cases, develop dissociative identity disorder, or what used to be known as multiple personality disorder, where you have so much trauma, your brain cannot absorb it all, so it just compartmentalizes it and almost creates this other version of yourself that has to deal with it somewhere else, and then the new version of you dealing with real life. So two different personalities at once, that can then lead to other personalities. Not what happens in this show, but Kathleen is the beginning stages of that, because she has so separated any vulnerable parts from her new version of herself. She has this tendency that most of us have, and the thought is that if I can get revenge, that's going to fix me. If I can get the revenge on the person or the thing that caused me the pain, well, that's also going to heal the pain. And if we get the revenge, it doesn't bring the satisfaction or the healing we thought it would. In fact, the revenge and the quest for the revenge itself, that makes everything worse, both with the people around us, with our circumstances, and with us inside.
He would be horrified by the things I've done. He told me to forgive. And what did he get for that? Where is the justice in that? What is the point of that?
She even admits that Michael would be horrified by what she's become, but she doesn't care. She's just blinded. She's going one-track mind. She can't even see any other alternatives other than revenge in order to heal me and make me feel safe again. And when we're blinded like that, one of the things we can't see is that forgiveness is actually the gateway to the healing and the feelings that we want to feel. Now, forgiveness doesn't mean you have to bring them back into your life or redevelop some sort of relationship with whoever it was that hurt you. Forgiveness just sets you free from the toxic revenge state.
We're with you.
Those tears are traces of the old, scared version of herself that's still locked deep inside of her, and they start to want to come out a little bit, but she quickly wipes them away. It's an eerie way she does it. You can see something comes over her face where just a small little micro expression, you can see she's stuffing all that back down and becoming this stoic, evil person again as soon as she gets that affirmation from Perry. See, he and the rest of that whole group, they follow Kathleen to a fault. They know that she's not the high character leader that Michael was, but they're following her anyway because she freed them up. See, people can rationalize things to themselves in order to follow somebody that they think has done them a favor. And whether they've actually helped us or not, or whether they really care about us or not, they've benefited us in some way. So it makes us want to overlook or justify their negative traits. And by the way, that creepy sweetness that Kathleen has going on, that's a reminder that in real life, sociopaths are really hard to spot. They can function in normal conversations, in normal society, and you would never know what they're thinking and what they're feeling on the inside, because they're able to just project this normal, nice, warm. A lot of times, most of the time, they can be very, very charming, so that when they get accused of something, people would never think that it would be that person that would do it. So they're not dumb. They know how to get away with stuff. Just like Kathleen, whatever the origins of her sweetness and her evil combination is, she shows both, and that often does happen in real life.
Do you trust me?
Those 4 words, do you trust me? I love this scene so much because they're about to get separated for the first time. Ellie's going to have to fend for herself, but Joel knows what he's capable of, and he gets to be the guardian. He gets to go into full protector mode. And man, even when they're separated, they still have this like mind. They're almost like they're sharing the same mind, anticipating each other's moves. Research shows that going through adversity together bonds us so tightly to the people we go through it with. It builds trust like nothing else can. And trust is the foundation, the bedrock of a strong relationship.
Stop!
All right, we already know Kathleen is a terrible leader. But in this moment, she shows just how bad leadership comes back to haunt not just the leader, but everybody. When I work with business executives and leaders, one of the main things I try to tell them is that they have got to be open and transparent. Because if a leader is truly selfless and puts their team first, they're going to tell their team about the challenges. They don't have to tell them every single detail about these challenges, but they have to at least acknowledge them, let them know that they see them with their own eyes, and tell them what the plan is. A good leader also listens really well and lets their employees feel heard. Even if they don't agree with what the employees are saying, even if they don't go down that road that the employers want them to go down, they at least listen well and let them know, hey, I hear you. Kathleen, on the other hand, even though she's fictional, she represents a whole lot of terrible leaders in the real world. She represents their selfishness and their refusal to listen. She knew about that sinkhole and she knew it meant danger for all the people counting on her. But she was so blinded by her need, her thirst for revenge, that she just totally tried to hide it. And the way she died was poetic justice, because she was killed by the very violence she was chasing. Right up until the end, she could have run away, she could have stayed to help her people fight, but instead she kept on chasing Henry. And even more justice is that even when she found Henry, she wouldn't let those kids go, and it was a kid zombie that ended up killing her. See, Kathleen can't blame what happened to Michael or her in the past as a reason for what she does now. That's not how this works. What happens to us in the past isn't the biggest determining factor of how we turn out. It's how we interpret and respond to what happened to us. We can't get stuck in what happened and who's to blame. We got to choose the mindset of how do I grow and how do I move forward stronger.
It's easier when you're a kid anyway. You don't have anybody else relying on you. That's the hard part.
Joel's right about the fact that as hard as all this stuff is that they're going through together, the hardest part is having somebody depending on you. Because not only does it complicate every decision and add a multitude of factors to everything you face, you also have these deep, deep attachments. Because those attachments bring expectations, pressure, responsibilities, but mainly fear and pain. And fear and pain may be the worst two parts of having somebody depend on you. Because you're always afraid of messing up and losing them and the pain that would ensue from that. So almost every decision you make ends up being driven by the fear of losing them. Because if you mess up, not only have you let them down, but you also have to live with the fact of what you might have done differently, which leads to potentially a lifetime of second guessing yourself. I don't think she realizes it yet in this moment, but Ellie with Sam in this moment now faces that same pressure of not losing somebody, not letting somebody down, just like Joel feels that same pressure about her. And yeah, Sam's counting on Henry, but in a different way, he's also counting on Ellie. And Ellie, by saying she doesn't want to be alone, she essentially can now identify with Kathleen in a way, because Kathleen lost Michael, and Ellie doesn't want to lose Joel. In other words, her Michael, the man that makes her feel safe. And the more she's gotten to know Sam, the more she's started to feel like maybe she can be the rescuer, just like Joel has such a strong desire and ability to be. So she puts herself out there, literally puts her blood into Sam in the hopes of healing him, but it ends horribly for her. And now she has to feel the weight of not coming through for somebody, just like Joel did when he lost Sarah.
Which way's west?
And here you can see how that experience has already changed her. She's become darker, stoic, callous, and now she's got a single-minded focus on the next step. There's no more playful, hopeful part of her, and I hope she gets that back, because we all need that if we're going to face more challenges in the future.
Let's go.
And now Ellie flips it on Joel, where she becomes the leader. She's the stoic one telling him, hey, come on, we got to move on. And Joel is rattled by that I'm sorry message. You can see it on his face. You can see it in the way he's moving. He's stunned. It's like he's in a fog. It's hitting him that he is now totally invested in Ellie. It's also hitting him that he's breaking the vow he probably made to himself long ago when he lost Sarah, to never get attached again and never let himself go through something like this again. And I think the I'm sorry is also to us, the viewers, for ripping away such awesome characters as Henry and Sam so quickly.